Friends, it is my pleasure to join you today. Let's just get started with the new material. We'll watch it one time and then I will review it. Okay, that is how that looked. And now it is time to review. This first one is a shot of Princess Nadia just hanging out. This is what it would be like in the broken antiquity. Common sight, just to see a bunch of people hanging out next to a fire. It's a common sight in our world too, except for here the sky is brown and they are worshiping the frozen flame. We don't do that so much, but if you can imagine that the overworld is like a patchwork quilt, then this would sort of be the glue that holds it all together. There's many different time zones pouring out of the places where fate has time crashed. However, you basically have the native soil would be this. This is how broken antiquity looks. So if you find yourself in this kind of an area, you know you're in reality. It would be trippy, trust me. You're running through all these little these time modalities and stuff, and then you come across these, and this is actually the base reality that was laying there before fate started time crashing all these other time spaces onto the map and terraforming it with the powers of the dragon god. Simple math. Here you have a theoretical character select party arrangement screen. You might notice that Migo and Gigi just moved together for story purposes and as a game mechanic. Migo and Gigi are inseparable. They always come in a party together, taking up 2 slots. And the same can be said for Kid and Gil until a certain story point. Migo and Gigi never split, but Kid and Gil can be split. Now you might be asking about the red targets around these 4 cats, and you will note that this is the Arbiter tag. Here are our 4 then Charlotte and Nadia. 4 starting, the 4 most common Arbiters. So right there you saw Gil got moved away from Nadia, and that would, or if not from Nadia, but from Kid. So that means the story element has been completed. And here's a brief journey into Cyrus, one of the new characters. Young Cyrus. This version of Cyrus here. Here's Cyrus taking on the Frog King, Frog Prince, Frog King. At that time he might have been the Prince. This is a direct translation from the original Japanese artwork through Google, direct Google translation. So this is his unfortunate scene where he was defeated, aka unalived. Young Cyrus has yet to live such horrors. This Cyrus isn't as cynical as the one we met in Chrono Trigger. His youthful optimism complements old Frog's jaded charm. So the scripts are flipped here in that Frog, while not completely pessimistic and so grim as Cyrus was in Chrono Trigger, he is a little bit more jaded, as it says. He's much older, so as you get older, you just get jaded. Cyrus is a lightning type and wields powerful techs like Nirvana Strike and Cyrus Punch. He has a passive tech which views enemies' field of agitation. I thought that'd be cool for him. Since he's a master tactician, then he's gonna be just like in Chrono Trigger. This is a speed run from Puexel, who runs Chrono Trigger, and you can note the way that he he chooses which battles he wants to take. He knows exactly the frame perfect. Watch this one. Right around that guy. Right around that guy. He knows the exact frame you have to go so that you do not have to engage a bad guy. So in the spirit of freedom of choice here, then I was thinking who would be the most likely candidate to have a passive tech where you can see a dome around where the enemies will engage you if you cross into their space. And since it hadn't been done before and Cyrus is a master tactician, I thought Cyrus has got to be the guy. So if you bring Cyrus with you, then you can more easily dodge fights. Oh, this is the most trivia of trivia. When Cyrus does Cyrus Punch as a final attack on Janus, he utters a cry not present in the rest of the game, which I imagine would be just a more enthusiastic Cyrus Punch. I don't know, man. I don't know why I came up with that, but it found its way into the notes and into the media. So this would be in Dimension Prime. And Dimension Prime is the same timeline that they avoided in Chrono Trigger. The one where Lavos, the day of Lavos is 1999. So keep in mind there is access to that timeline as well as the Keystone timeline that we love. More on that to come later. Retrieve the hero medal by beating the Frog King. A master tactician, Cyrus has spacing techs for moving enemies into position. Cyrus's non-magic tech can be taught to other party members. Like this, you have training. So if you're at home base and you set up a battle between your party members, they can transfer teachable tech. Triple T's, transfer teachable tech in training battles. These battles deplete health, but there is no danger of KO, aka permanent removal from the party. Which here, I guess we should talk about that too, even though I talk about it quite a bit. I was thinking about it, and since the squad that you get is the caveman squad that you start with is sort of inspired by Final Fantasy Tactics, I think it's fair to say that the permadeath game mechanic could be one of those ones where you get knocked out, and then if you stay inactive for a certain amount of time, you cannot be revived. At any rate, so there's teachable tech. What kind of tech would be teachable? Any non-magical tech, really. And what kind of non-magical techs do we have? Or pre-magical tech? Hypno-Wave. Hypno-Wave is pre-magical tech. Did you ever think about that? She knows that way before they go to visit Specchio. What else is pre-magical tech? How about Princess Nadia? Could she teach aura to someone if she had the chance? I think probably she could. So, can't teach magical abilities unless you're of the same native element, but you can teach stuff like Hypno-Wave and so forth. So, does that include Cyrus's spacing tech and his field of agitation passive tech? It certainly does. I'll just throw this up for a minute. Hey, why is that so badly sized? Shame on me. And it looks pretty rough right there. Let's see, man. Spacing text. Interact with character and enemy positioning. Cyrus is an adept user of this new kind of tech. This was totally inspired by Ryan Beardy, the idea of spacing tech. He is a YouTuber. Here is the clip I am referring to.
Proximity attacks are such an interesting addition to turn-based combat. We have moves that hit enemies close to one another, hit enemies in a straight line, or hit enemies close to the player. Adding attacks that manipulate player or enemy movement would add a fun layer of strategy, strengthened by the fact that each battle's in a unique location. Having the player or enemies interact with the environment would also be cool to see. Imagine seeing a visual indication of an enemy attack, and using Chrono's Sword Strike to attack through another enemy, in order to move him out of the way. Or use Isla's Strength to push an enemy into lava. Or using one of Luca's many gadgets to cause an earthquake or avalanche that drops rocks on an enemy location. Giving enemies the same kind of tools could further deepen or strategize even the most basic enemy encounters.
You said it, bro. Spacing tech. Using the environment. Chrono Trigger already leans that way, the way the enemies move around and the spacing and what they do. They're not always in the same spot. And also, Chrono Cross leaned into that with the field elements, changing the elements of the field. I've got some ideas on that, which I'll get to later. Has to do with summons. Summons. What would summons be like in Chrono Trigger? What would be their function? We've already seen summonable elements in Chrono Cross, but I got some ideas about the summons. We're going to get to that this month. At least it's on the agenda for this month. Okay. And then about his growth as a character. So young Cyrus was all about becoming this great warrior. But if Cyrus catches a glimpse into the Keystone timeline, he may see that the great warrior he became was responsible for many deaths. And then you have a great hero, ... And you guys know what ... means. That means it's implying something. So maybe in this game, he could temper his, his tragic flaw is, it's not really pride so much as, the will to conquer. And so side questing Cyrus could be all about coming to grips with maybe being strong is one thing, but being this crazy conqueror, that's something different. Let's continue. If the party agrees to enter 1999, that's story gate number 2. If you decide to get involved in the War of the Jealous Gods, Frog suggests they try and find some help before joining the war. Cyrus is bent on finding the massive moon when you get him, although some argue an Einlanzer suits him better. I was thinking you could also introduce a mechanic where people are sort of yelling out stuff on the field. Cyrus is chatty. Young Cyrus loves the thrill of battle. He calls enemies cretins and marshmallows constantly. He also possesses a noble heart. He's always the first to notify the party leader if anyone is hungry. In a game where the end game is about maintaining your overworld, food could be an issue. Food could be a thing. That's nitty-gritty, but it's possible there could be a food element. Food was a heavy theme in, well, not heavy, but it was a tangential, and it was in Chrono Trigger. Equip Cyrus with a corrupted massive moon for interesting results. A lot of times there'll be a picture that I saw that I thought, man, that is so amazing. And so I had to incorporate it into the story. This is one of them by Tindiflow. This picture of Cyrus is awesome, and it gives me major Corrupted Masamune vibes. This is another one. You know, I saw that and it immediately triggered something where I thought, dang, this has to be in the story. There has to be this version of Frog. And this one is by El Zano. And then there's one more that did the same thing. And that is this one by Cymorg. So the whole Lucas variant, if I just direct you to the main cast, you can see that Marl, Robo, Isla with all of her friends, Frog, Chrono, Serge, Luca, Kid, Magus, Shala, Cyrus. And you can see that Luca, Chrono, and Magus have dots next to their name, and that's because they are the only ones that have variants. And Luca's variant is the Guru of Reason. And that completely comes from this picture by Cymorg. It's so cool. She's got connections to Norstein Beckler. She's from an alternate... She's from a reality where some other stuff happened to Luca that I'll get into later, but I think I have one more video of her. A different path. In one reality, Tabin ostracized Luca after Lara's death, and she found her purpose as Norstein Beckler's protege. She knows much more than our Luca about dimensionality. So she's more focused on dimension, whereas Luca knows a lot about time. She even found a way to send Wedge and Biggs back to their home dimension, a place she calls the adjacency. So, the adjacency, as you might have guessed, check out this mission. Where are they? The Magitech Research Facility. Collecting Magicite. So what is the adjacency? I'm not going to say directly that it's Final Fantasy VI, but it is... I won't say anything else, except for Guru Luca can summon Ultros. That's her summon. And the reason I tied... There is some bleed over from Final Fantasy VI because they came out at in like back to back. That was just such a huge peak era for 16-bit RPGs. Okay. Oh, that's all there was. Sorry, I thought it was going to switch. Might as well continue this one. So you can see she doesn't use guns. She uses daggers. So she's got a ruby knife. Think about it. Where did she come from? What has she got? What is she holding there? What is her key item? The ash tier? It looks like a janky frozen flame. A green frozen flame. Frozen flame. My frozen flame is green. But it's not really... That's only because that's the only sprite I had. I doubt it would actually look like the frozen flame. In fact, it definitely does not look like the frozen flame, but in this case, to show the similarities, I wanted to show you her invention, the ash tier, which functions in some ways similar to a frozen flame, but not totally. Much more on that later. And you can see that she has some skills from Final Fantasy VI as well, like this. Merton. Unleash a fire attack so strong it damages the party. Final Fantasy VI Classic Merton. And there's one more that she can do from Final Fantasy VI. This Luca picked up truly exotic tech while under the tutelage of Norstein Beckler. She's got Metamorph. Transform an enemy into an item. I got completely sidetracked there by Luca Guru Luca, but that's okay. We can recover from this. We'll just go back to the videos we were watching. Thank you to Tindy Flow for this amazing illustration of, that even looks like young Cyrus with a corrupted Masamune. I need say no more. Tough choices. Like the scene in Chrono Trigger at Terra Cave. By the way, because it came out right after Final Fantasy VI, when I was reading the game magazine and it said go to Terra Cave and pick up a familiar face, I thought for sure that Terra from Final Fantasy VI was in Chrono Trigger before discovered that it was Magus there. But the point of this slide is to, if you go to Terra Cave in Chrono Trigger and you say the wrong, and you say the wrong piece of dialogue, then you end up fighting Magus there and you do not recruit Magus. And that is a huge divergence in your game based on one shred of dialogue. And that's the sort of theme I would hope to bring to this project, where you make a choice and then you can't get it back. This choice was final. And that's why Chrono Break is made to be replayed. One run anywhere from 10 minutes to 4 hours to 8 hours. But if you made a choice, I mean, this was a huge thing. If you actually chose to fight him here, then that completely affects the late game of Chrono Trigger. Saying the wrong thing may lead to unfavorable and irreversible outcome. All right, and then we're back to prehistory. This was one that I talked about last time, but I redid the text because the text looked so bad last time. I think it looks like this. This is what it used to look like. Oh yeah, you can't even read that. So I redid it. But the key thing is this blue door in the top of the screen. This advanced technology lab has no place, no business being in prehistory. Only a fully charged pendant or Masamune will open the door. The Neo-Epoch inside may work if the anti-proton engine could be repaired. And I was looking through some of the non-used sprites from Chrono Trigger, and I thought, hey, look, we totally found the parts to an anti-proton engine. Tell me that doesn't look like a proton engine. It doesn't, because it's an anti-proton engine. Anyway, these are some unused sprites from Chrono Trigger. More on the Neo-Epoch later. Epoch? Neo-Epoch? Tupac. Continue. And the next one is another one that we worked on last episode. So you got your party here. You're in 1020 AD. If the player accepts Melchior's quest to travel to Marbule for elements, they can access El Nido in 1020 AD and explore. Marbule was built by fate to house the Black Dragon, which the demi-humans worshipped. It is also rich in elemental materials. So Melchior is still selling weapons. I thought you were the guru of life, buddy. That was the theme of Chrono Trigger. The guru of life became a weapon salesman. The guru of reason lost his mind. And the guru of time got lost in time. And so we're going to expand that in this one. This is early game Melchior. This is before you actually get to the true world of the game. This is just kind of like, I'll talk about that in a minute. And the last one? The Frozen Flame. The party can acquire the Frozen Flame by defeating Pico in the Darkness Beyond Time. Also, if you do a kid start, if you start with kid starting scenario, then you start with the Frozen Flame. And that is the Frozen Flame from another world. Because they stole it. They straight up stole it. But that's all before the game started. Okay, so parties with the Frozen Flame are capable of trans-dimensional travel. I don't want to get way too crazy with it, so I'm going to pull that back for now and say the Frozen Flame is capable of trans-dimensional travel, but the dimensional travel is a bit limited. It's not a massive component of the gameplay. It's basically like, because time is broken, then you're traveling to dimensions is going to other sets of timelines. They're like side quests, they're pockets, and they're contained. And so that would be sort of an infinite amount of DLC to release over the years, are these pocket dimensions. But they're not super integral to the story. That's why having a Frozen Flame, you're capable of trans-dimensional travel. It just means this finally gives you the chance to access these side quests. Well, that would be fantastic, Manitoba Urban. That would be amazing. But we don't need the AI. We could do it real fast. Square Enix, just call me up. I know exactly how to do it. It would take so fast to do because it would be so similar to Chrono Trigger that all you need to do is strip down all the Chrono Trigger assets and then rearrange them really quickly. Plus, this game would go from... you wouldn't have to build that much of a traditional game with the narrative and everything, because it's kind of like Final Fantasy 13 in that you have a very direct route to an open world thing. So you would only really need that intro chapter that I've been explaining with Princess Nadia to get to the break and the open world aspect of it, where then you have very basic things like this area, program monsters to attack, this area, program monsters to attack, and all you have to do is fend off the monsters with very little story development. I think we could... Please, Square Enix, I think we could release this within a year or two. Anyway, that's just radical dreaming right there, baby. Equipping the Frozen Flame on a character for 2,000 battles will make them an Arbiter. If this Arbiter goes to the game over, it will trigger a new game plus Kid Start. You'll go to the Kid Start. If you destroy the frozen flame, the condition changes to no arbiter mode. Any party in the break is now playable. Any party composition. Which is totally what we're going to talk about at this very moment. Every new game begins with the last arbiter to fall on the previous run. So we have these 4 plus Ayla with the ancestral elements reset. There's 5 ways to start your game. If you're playing and you game over, your last arbiter is Marl, then you'll start at the Marl start. If the last one is Shala, you can start at the Shala start. If it's Serge, start at Serge start, and Kid, obviously Kid, Guild start. Or just restart it manually and go to the Ayla start. But Arbiters is the topic for the day. Let us see what we got. All right, starting with the first one. The Arbiter link. Why are Arbiters important? Why are they important? An Arbiter must be present in every playable party dispatched into the break. The more Arbiters you recruit, the more you can explore. If the player opts to destroy the frozen flame during the battle with Pico, no Arbiter mode is unlocked. In this game condition, you can dispatch unlimited parties of any character composition. Like this. You see, these parties don't all have an Arbiter, or in fact they do, potentially. But you can see down in the bottom right, it says no Arbiter mode. So this would be a game where the frozen flame has been destroyed. Alrighty, what is the next Arbiter film? Marl and Atropos have Arbiter status because of their time in the temporal void. First of all, we should ask ourselves, who would be an Arbiter? What is an Arbiter and who would be an Arbiter? Let's start with what is an Arbiter. Alrighty. Party switch, for sure. This looks bad. Maybe I will do this. We need to find a home for these Arbiter notes today. This one looks good. And we bring this bad boy down. First of all, what is arbitration? You know? What made Serge an arbiter? What is an arbiter? We got to talk about that first. The Chrono series may change a lot, but at the core of it, the biggest constant is always Lavos. That is true. Chrono Trigger to Chrono Cross was very different, but Lavos was at the center. So we got that. We also got one of these. Why does arbitration lie at the core? Why am I talking so much about arbitration all the time? Well, I suppose it is because arbiters were speculated by Ultimania to be Arbiters are the player's points of entry into the story and determine how many independent playable parties you can have in the field. If an arbiter dies, play shifts to a remaining arbiter. Party members questing with the deceased arbiter make their way back to Breakwave Point under auto-quested status, which does not guarantee a safe return. This is not the note that I was looking for, though. I think maybe it's this one. I definitely do not expect you guys to be able to read this, but who would be an arbiter? Well, you got Serge and Nadia, Shala, Kid. Is it Kid or is it Gil? It's never decided which one of those two is actually an arbiter. Because it could be, since Kid is Shala's clone, it could be that arbiter status is transferred cross-clonally, but also it might not. It could be there's two prevailing theories about how arbiter status is achieved. And the first one is that it's contact with the frozen flame. And we're going with, yes, that is a way that it can happen. That's why you can make any of your characters into an arbiter if you equip them with the frozen flame for 2,000 battles. However, there is another theory, and that one is more dubious, but I think it's cool, so I included it. It's like, exactly. Marl and Atropos spent some time in, Marl straight up got ripped from existence. And Atropos would have had a similar experience, but here, we saw the very moment where Nadia was flung into, we know not where, but some have speculated the darkness beyond time, or she was ripped out of the timeline. So she has extra, extra timeline vibes. She might be an arbiter because of that. And Atropos hacked the properties of an arbiter onto herself artificially because she learned all about the darkness beyond time and stuff like that. However, the prevailing theory, as it comes from the Chrono Trigger Ultimania, but we cannot take that at face value because they're not 100% correct. They said that the Promethean circuit was not Robo, and the official creator said it was Robo. So they're not canon for sure. But they had a cool idea that, it's from exposure to the frozen flame. So in that case, you have... It could be that Serge, Shala, and Kid and or Gil has their Arbiter status from connection with the frozen flame. If, in fact, the original Mammon machine used the frozen flame, which we never get confirmation that it did or it didn't. But if it did, and this is the way that Arbiter status is reached, then you gotta think that other people who might be Arbiters include... You got Atropos, like I said, she's kind of an artificial Arbiter, but Queen Zeal could have been an Arbiter, and in this timeline where Dalton had so much exposure to the flame, even Dalton could have been an Arbiter. But the OG Arbiter, our boy Serge, he was actually selected by the Promethean circuit to be the Arbiter through the frozen flame. So there's a whole lot of stuff going on in there which I'd be willing to explore in more depth, but I was kind of imagining that the parts of Robo that were integrated into Fate as the Promethean circuit, they would have benefited from Fate's insane computational power. So the Promethean circuit could have been like a turbocharged advanced Robo program, So in that state, he came to understand all of the stuff about anti-annihilation energy, all of that kind of thing. And so he made the call to make Serge into an Arbiter. It's very clear. He locked out. All we know functionally is that the role of an Arbiter is to... it locks out the... It put a lock on the frozen flame. Fate could not get to the frozen flame, aka Fate could not be an Arbiter buddy with it. I'm not sure. Did she want to become an Arbiter? Yeah, it's not really clear what an Arbiter is, but as far as this game goes as a game mechanic, it's just like in the early game, you have to have an Arbiter in your party, and I'll explain totally why that is right now. In these notes, it says, there's a demi-human in Marbule in Chrono Cross that says anyone who touches the flame will become a different being. Serge has traditional Arbiter designation. Marl was erased from existence briefly in Chrono Trigger, and Atropos, although she is playable, also has a part to play. Ultimania speculated that Shala was an Arbiter in Zeal, probably controlling the flame's use in the Mammon machine. And this link is what caused Lavos to merge with her and become the Time Devourer. I could see that. It doesn't have to be that she's an Arbiter and having been used the frozen flame, but it is the most likely connection. That's the most common connection we've seen a human make to Lavos is through the frozen flame. So he might have reached out to her in the darkness beyond time because of that connection, and that's how they became Time Devourer. For this story, we've got Shala. She could be either. She spent time in the darkness beyond time, and she had contact with the flame. So she could be, her Arbiter status could be achieved either way. Queen Zeal and Dalton might also be Arbiters. This is not exactly the part I wanted to discuss. The Chrono Cross Ultimania... Oh, this is it. This is it. The Chrono Cross Ultimania claims the Arbiter of the Frozen Flame must mediate It's mediation between his fellow life forms and Lavos, or else he will inevitably bind with the creature and spell destruction for other humans. And if you think about it, that is exactly what happened to Queen Zeal. She inevitably bound with the creature and spelled destruction of other humans. So this kind of goes into the humanizing of Lavos that happens here, where it's like, okay, think about it. Lavos is actually he's just like a jaguar. He's an animal. He's a function of nature. Yes, he crash lands on a planet and like kicks up a bunch of dirt. That sucks for everyone. But then he straight up, think about what he does. He goes underground and he stays there for a long time. Over 65 million years. And we know that he also grants the people of the planet magic. So this is briefly touched on in The Dusk of Time, but Lucas starts to wonder, like, is Lavos really so bad? Because he crashes, he imbues people with magic at least by 12,000 BC, right? So they have at least 14,000 years before he erupts out of the planet, from magic to eruption. And don't you think that if Queen Zeal had been not so zealous, if she had been not so greedy with him, and if she had learned to work in harmony with Lavos, I mean, humanity had already ascended to the clouds. Couldn't they have ascended further and maybe have escaped the catastrophe? If you think about Lavos crashing on the planet, it's going to cause mass destruction. But before that, it magically blesses the natives of the planet so that they don't have to, sit through that destruction so terribly. Of course, in Chrono Trigger they did, because of what Queen Zeal did. She basically abused she abused Lavos. So that really lends a lot of credence to the idea that Arbiters are mediators between Lavos and the planet. And that basically just provides a gameplay reason for us to even be playing. It's like we want to better the timeline. We need to mediate between Lavos and the planet. I lost 2 there. Excuse me. So that's what Arbiters is all about, and that's why when you're running around the map, you have to play as an Arbiter until at least a certain plot point is resolved. Because until you've mediated totally with Lavos, aka Pico, this arrangement is still in effect. That's why if you destroy the Frozen Flame and presumably defeat Pico, Arbiters are off the table. There's no more mediation because there's no one to even mediate. It's a one-sided conversation at that point. But I suppose that is a good summation of the Arbiter stuff. And yeah, here is another example of the 5 starting scenarios that you can do. You can do, this is the OG version of this file. Let's see if I can find the nice one. Here it is. Game overs happen. The starting scenario for your next run corresponds to the last Arbiter to fall. Recruit more Arbiters to have more parties, or use ancestral elements at any time to reset to Ayla start, aka Campfire 700 AD. Okay. Alright, let's find a home for some of these items. I think this one has a home. I would kind of like to do something more with that, but I think I'll just get to it later. I don't really love that. Let's see what we got here. Double Arbiter Party. Alrighty. Arbitration and the player. Hopefully I didn't already read this one. Let's see what it says. Oh yeah, perfect. Arbiters must mediate. I gotta shrink that a bit. Arbiters must mediate between Lavos and the planet. This represents the player's need to maintain the overworld. There is a deep enmity between you and the world once you touch the flame, from Chrono Cross. And you know what? I totally looked up enmity, and it doesn't have to be a hatred. It can just be an opposition. So that is the crux of the gameplay. If you want to get super meta with it, the reason you're playing is because you are in opposition with the overworld. And you have to bend it to your will, destroy the monsters and make it peaceful for the people. The Arbiter bond represents the player's connection to Lavos. So it goes straight to the core of it all. As our boy Rodrigo said, you know what he said. He said it over on this other screen. He said it here? Where did he say it? Oh, he said it here. The Chrono series may change a lot, but Lavos is always the constant. That looks fantastic. I'm going to leave that. Okay. And I will clean that up. But not today. I keep thinking I'm going to make these little clips on the fly during the stream and then realizing that that's way too much work. It's better just to make them before and then review it. It's too scatterbrained to be making all these new clips at the same time. But you didn't really need to know that. The story reason to compel the gameplay. Arbiter has less story relevance, it's just a gameplay mechanic in this one. Alrighty, what other Arbiter stuff were we talking about? Oh, I got another video of it. And we're almost done talking about arbitrage. What's this one say? Oh. If no Arbiter mode is activated, the game ends when the last two cavemen cast ancestral elements. Or everyone gets wiped out? I don't know. That one was just a like a little trial one. It's not canon. It's not confirmed. There was one more though. Oh, this. Certain characters carry the designation Arbiter. The player starts as Marl when selecting new game, also known as Marl Start. Arbiters include Serge, Nadia, Shala, Kid. Then Atropos and Beach Bum are non-playable. And it's not Beach Bum either, it's the Balthazar new. Here we go. And Azala too. Because that's from the Dusk of Time. That's from her massive, you know, she was dealing quite often with the Frozen Flame in this. I worked so hard on it, I might as well show it off. Watch our 3-part series on the channel. Did Luca die after the orphanage fire? Where did Dalton go after Chrono Trigger? And the 2-hour feature film, Chrono Trigger, The Dusk of Time, where all of that is explained. Alright, I got one we can look at. So here we are at the player home base in the break, in the overworld. Breakwave Point. And the reason I call it that is because here is a list of unused location names from Chrono Trigger. Thank you to thecuttingroomfloor.net. And the unused place names were Gob's house, and Gob we used. Eternal Repos, that's an idea for a tech that I have, like super sleep tech. And then you have Breakwave Point. And so that's where I got the name for their... Oh, I'm sorry, I was talking away from the microphone. These are unused location names. We used Gob. Eternal Repos could be Sleep Tech. And then that's where I got the name Breakwave Point from, because it just sounds perfect for the headquarters of the crew while they're in the break, chrono break, doesn't it? It just sounds too perfect. So Breakwave Point, a lot of these concepts, remember, are written into the DNA of Chrono Trigger. They're just repurposed for this project. Then you got the Robot Village and Singing Mountain, Eyeless Tent, and the Exoskeleton. So Gob and Singing Mountain and the Exoskeleton are all covered in the Dusk of Time. And the only one that is not currently incorporated yet is Eyeless Tent. And my feeling for that was, imagine that you have Isla brings her tribe on this adventure. A random selection of Iuka and Laruba await the beginning of every game. So what I was imagining was this. I also had in my notes that you have to do soup drinking, has to be in there somewhere, right? They're drinking the soup, which in the Japanese version of Chrono Trigger, was it soup? I felt like they changed it. It was something more scandalous, like it was kind of a boozy something. Anyway, Every member of Isla's tribe has random stats to make every game unique. Imagine Final Fantasy Tactics, where your new units come with a certain numerical assignment of stats. But here's what I was thinking. So if you do the Ayla restart, then you actually start at her tent, okay? And you do the soup drinking. You just mash the button pad as much as you can at the start of an Isla start. You mash the button pad and you drink as much soup as you can. And if you drink 4 soups, then your random stats for your party the next day will be a little bit higher than if you drink 3. And if you drink 5 soups, then they'll be a little bit higher than if you drank 4. You know what I'm saying? So you could incorporate the soup at the beginning of the Ayla start and Ayla's tent as like just a playful way to maybe moderately boost the starting stats of your party, of your cave party. Let's see, is there anything else we need to cover? Oh yes, there certainly is. I'll lower the volume and bring it in. I hope you enjoy. There we go. So we're finally moving on to the next part of the story after we've done the whole prequel part, the whole tutorial chapter where Princess Nadia does her whole thing and meets up with Ayla. Then they're at the end of time and they're training to go face the Vision Serpent. But do not forget, my friends, that the Vision Serpent is a mighty foe, and it might be easier to defeat such a foe. The Vision Serpent is made of Dreamstone. You'll need some strong weapons to stand a chance. Strong weapons like what? I don't know. Like maybe 2 Masamoons and a Master Moon? Yeah, maybe that. So, just back to this part. 2 time zones hold 3 recruitable wielders of the Masamoon. So either go to 2300 and face the Vision Serpent and run into the break and get the real game started, or take your time and pick up Frog, Chrono, I should say Old Chrono, and Serge, and also known as the Massa Boys. And that'll make it much easier when you get to that massive story battle later. So next time we will be getting into that a little bit more. We'll be looking at Serge, the Assassin of Time. After Serge unified the dimensions, he lost his memory as a result of encountering the Time Devourer. Name me one person that does not lose their memory after encountering Time Devourer. And I will show you a way that we could make the Time Devourer memory loss thing totally canon. For instance, what if the Steel Shade, the Alabaster Shade, and the Crimson Shade that you encounter in DS, Chrono Trigger DS, what if they are nothing more than Chrono, Marlon, and Luca in a reality where they encountered the Time Devourer and they lost their damn mind, or at least lost their damn memory. At any rate, we'll get into more of that later, but he comes equipped with the Master Moon. And guess what? I really want to get into that later. We will talk about Serge next time as we journey into 1020 AD and collect some Komodo scales and talk about multi-party mechanics and affinity gauges, invisible affinity gauges. Thanks so much for joining me. I will certainly catch you next time. It has been my absolute pleasure to talk about some of this today with you. And perhaps we can end it with one of these. Hold your ears.